All right, welcome everyone to the State Water Board Staff Workshop on the Extended Water and Wastewater Arrearage Program Guidelines. My name is Karen Mogus. I'm the Deputy Director of the Division of Water Quality at the State Water Board, and I'll be leading today's presentation. I'm joined today by Lisa McCann, Environmental Program Manager from the Division of Water Quality, Salika Potter with the Division of Financial Assistance, Darren Polhemus, Deputy Director of the Division of Water of the Division of Drinking Water, and Julie Osborne with the Office of Chief Counsel. And they will be available to help me answer any questions that you all have as we go along. So today we're going to discuss the Water Board's Extended Arrearage Program. The program is an opportunity for water and wastewater providers to be reimbursed for financial losses due to the customer's inability to pay their water and or wastewater bills due to the COVID pandemic. The term arrearage in this context means any money owed to a water or wastewater system by residential and commercial customers for unpaid bills during the COVID relief period. The funding requirements, COVID relief period, and responsibility for the State Water Board is the responsibility for the State Water Board to implement and were established by statute. The program is called the Extended Arrearage Program because the period for which arrearages can be reimbursed has been extended from the shorter period for the previous California Water and Wastewater Arrearage Payment Program. The previous program only could pay arrearages accrued from March 2020 through June 15th, 2021. The Extended Arrearage Program can pay arrearages accrued from March 2020 through December 31st, 2022. The funding is from the Federal American Rescue Plan Act of March 2021. So the purpose of today's workshop is to provide an overview of the draft Extended Arrearage Program guidelines required for the State Water Board to administer this program. During this workshop, interested parties will be given the opportunity to provide feedback or ask questions to staff regarding the draft guidelines. As a reminder, today's workshop is for informational purposes only. No formal action will be taken today. Finally, all information provided during this workshop will be available at the State Water Board's Extended Arrearage Program webpage at the URL shown on the current slide. You can also use the QR code to jump to that website as well. This workshop is being recorded and webcasted. Questions will be answered to the best of staff's ability. This PowerPoint presentation and the audio recording will be posted on the webpage that's shown here, which you can review at your own leisure. And we have options for participation, which I hope all who are interested have availed themselves of one of these two already. But to go over it, the first format is to participate via Zoom. Participants should access the link to the Zoom meeting on the meeting notice prior to the start of the workshop. The second format is for those who just want to view the meeting through the CaliPA webcast. You can type in video.calipa.ca.gov and it should take you to the main webcast page where this meeting can be found. While viewing the webcast, if there are any questions or comments that come up as we walk through the presentation, please feel free to send an email to those of those questions or comments to the email address shown here, dfa-waterarrearages@waterboards.ca.gov. If you are on the Zoom platform, you are welcome to submit questions in the Q&A box. Oh, that's my next slide. If you're on the Zoom platform, you can type your questions or feedback into the Q&A box. We will read your question or comment and we will verbally answer those during the webinar. We are also going to be pasting any questions we receive via email from the webcast into the Q&A so everyone can see those questions as well. All right, so now that we've covered the meeting logistics for today's presentation, we'll provide a brief background on the Arrearages Payment Program. Then we'll provide an overview of the Extended Arrearages Program guidelines. And following the interview, we'll take just a short break, about 10 minutes. And after the break, we'll proceed to the questions and comments portion of the workshop. And finally, we'll conclude with an overview of the next steps. All right, so by way of background, the State Water Board previously provided payments to community water systems, wastewater treatment providers, and wastewater billing entities to forgive residential and commercial customer arrearages that accrued during the original COVID-19 pandemic bill relief period of March 4th, 2020 through June 15th, 2021. The time frame from the COVID-19 pandemic bill relief period has been extended, and the definition of a wastewater treatment provider has been amended. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Congress passed the American Rescue Plan Act in March of 2021, which provided $985 million in federal funding to be allocated by the California State Legislature for water and wastewater arrearages. The California State Water Resources Control Board, the State Water Board, is the lead agency that was tasked with creating the Water and Wastewater Arrearages Payment Program to provide relief for customers of community water and wastewater systems for unpaid bills accrued during the pandemic. Out of the $985 million, approximately $385 million was provided to water and wastewater systems for unpaid water bills. The leftover funds of approximately $600 million are available to provide customer relief for unpaid water and wastewater utility bills for an extended period of time through the Extended Arrearage Program. As indicated here, the previous arrearage program covered arrearages through June 15th, 2021, and was implemented in two phases. First, the drinking water arrearages for community water systems, and then wastewater arrearages. The Extended Arrearage Program extends the relief period through December 31st, 2022, and considers applications for both water and wastewater arrearages simultaneously. Additionally, the definition of wastewater treatment provider was amended, as we'll discuss later. Please note that although the bill that authorized the Extended Arrearage Program included reimbursement for enterprise revenue losses, it has been determined that reimbursement for those losses is not authorized under the requirements of the American Rescue Plan Act. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later when I get into the overview of the guidelines. This is the timeline for public review and board meeting consideration for the proposed Extended Arrearage Program. On August 25th, 2023, State Water Board staff released the Extended Arrearage Guidelines to establish the proposed Extended Arrearage Program. Today is the staff-hosted public workshop to present the draft guidelines and answer questions about the Extended Arrearage Program. The written comment period on the draft guidelines concludes at noon on this coming Monday, September 25th, 2023. And at its October 3rd, 2023 board meeting, the State Water Board will consider adopting the guidelines for the program. All right, now I will shift to an overview of the guidelines. First up is eligibility. There are three main categories of entities that are eligible to apply for funding under the draft guidelines. The first category is community water systems, which is defined as any system regulated under the Safe Drinking Water Act. That is any public water system that serves at least 15 service connections for permanent residents or regularly serves at least 25 permanent residents. All community water systems, large or small, are eligible to apply for funding. The second category is wastewater treatment providers, defined as either of the following: a city, county, special district, or joint powers authority that provides wastewater collection, treatment, or disposal services through a publicly owned treatment works, or a privately owned facility used in the treatment or reclamation of sewage or industrial waste and regulated by the Public Utilities Commission. The third category of eligible applicants is wastewater billing entities, which is defined in the draft guidelines to include any entities that bill customers on behalf of a wastewater treatment provider. This could be a city, a county, or a special district. Moving over to the period of eligibility, I've discussed this a little bit already. Available funding for accrued residential and commercial customer arrearages is for those arrearages that accrued from March 4th, 2020 to December 31st, 2022. This includes any billing period that includes those dates. Applicants requesting arrearage relief for the first time are eligible for the extended arrearage program for the full extended relief period from March 4th, 2020 to December 31st, 2022. Applicants that previously participated in the water arrearages program or the wastewater arrearages program only are eligible for the modified relief period from June 16th, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. They cannot request additional arrearages accrued from March 4th, 2020 to June 15th, 2021. So what is covered under the extended arrearage program? Expenditures that are covered in the guidelines include residential and commercial debt, administrative costs of the applicant that are incurred in applying for assistance or complying with the program requirements. And this amount is 3% of the total arrearage accrued or $1 million, whichever is less. What is not included are commercial customers, specifically any industrial facilities such as manufacturing, refineries, or animal and food processing. It also does not include agricultural irrigation or landscape irrigation. Funding also is not available to cover any late fees or interest accrued on the unpaid wastewater bills. Water or wastewater bills, that is. Enterprise revenue losses, as I mentioned before, are not legally reimbursable with funds from the American Rescue Plan Act allocated to the state. So these are now I'll go through the extended arrearage program requirements. So to participate under the proposed program, approved applicants will need to waive any late fees assessed or interest accrued, as I mentioned in the previous slide. Bill credits will need to be credited to customer accounts within 60 days of receiving payment from the State Water Board. And customers will need to be provided written notification from the approved applicant, notifying them that the provider or billing entity has received arrearage funding from the State Water Board using Federal American Rescue Plan Act funding, and that the funds have been credited to the customer's account. Continuing on with more requirements for community water systems, they must offer payment plans and not discontinue service until a customer defaults on a plan or does not enroll in a plan on time. Participating applicants will need to comply with the terms and conditions of payment. And finally, approved applicants will need to submit a report on expenditures and customer credits, and the reporting, basically a reporting documenting where and how the funds were spent. The State Water Board will set up an online portal to submit applications. We'll be asking applicants to provide the following documentation: a record of the number of customer accounts in arrears and for how much, a completed disbursement request form, which is a summary of the total arrearage funding request signed by the authorized representative of the applicant or their designee, a conditions of payment form in which the applicant will certify that the arrearage funds will be used according to the guidelines established for the program and that funds will not be misused, a tax ID request form so that we have on file, so that we have it on file, what the employer identification number or tax ID is for IRS purposes, a unique entity ID required by the Department of Finance, which can be obtained from sam.gov. Additional documentation may be necessary to process applications. Templates for the documentation that will need to be submitted will be provided by the State Water Board for applicants to complete. All right, now I'll move on to the disbursement process and the priority for funds. State Water Board staff will process disbursements as soon as complete applications are received and reviewed. After the close of the application period, all applications will be totaled, and the total amount of if the total amount of applications is less than available funds for the program, all eligible applicants will receive 100% of their application amount. If the total amount of applications exceeds the funds available for the program, each eligible applicant will receive a proportional percentage of their application amount. Staff will prioritize the timing of disbursements to small applicants serving small communities, and staff may also prioritize timing of disbursements to applicants serving disadvantaged communities. Once an applicant is approved for arrearage funds, if they are a provider or billing entity that directly bills customer accounts, then a direct credit needs to be applied to the customer account for the outstanding arrearages within 60 days of receiving payment. Applicants must notify customers of the amount credited and acknowledge that the credited amount is being provided through the extended arrearage program of the State Water Resources Control Board using Federal American Rescue Plan Act funds. For arrearage debt that has since been transferred to a third-party entity, such as a debt collection agency, the approved applicant can provide a credit in one of three ways. The first is direct payment to the third-party entity to eliminate or reduce the customer's arrearage debt. The second option is to refund the credited amount directly to the customer by issuing a check. That way, the customer has the option to pay down the third-party transferred debt. The final option is for the provider or billing entity to create a positive balance for the customer to apply toward future bills. The applicant must not furnish information about debts cleared through the program to any consumer reporting agency. Approved applicants must remit any funds not credited to customers back to the State Water Board within 6 months of receiving payment. All right, moving on to reporting. First, consumer debt reporting. Funding recipients must not furnish information about debts cleared through the program to any consumer reporting agency. If they previously furnished information about debt cleared through the program to a consumer reporting agency, then they must, within 30 days of receiving program funding, instruct the consumer reporting agency to delete all information about the debt. Fund recipients must not assign debt covered by the program to a third party for collection. If the applicant receives arrearages that have been assigned to a third party debt collector, the applicant must recall the debt. All right, we're going to move on shortly after maybe even just, that didn't take very long. We can probably just go ahead and move on to questions and comments so that everyone has plenty of time. And if we need to take a break in between, we'll do that. So again, if you are on the Zoom platform, please insert any questions or comments into the Q&A. You can just click the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom screen and staff will verbally answer your questions on the webinar. In addition, if you are on the Cali PA webcast, you can send an email to the DFA-waterarrearages@waterboards.ca.gov, and we will paste your questions and comments into the Q&A and also answer your questions verbally during the webinar. So I'm going to skip the break and we'll start with questions. And I'm actually going to stop sharing the screen for now, I think. We'll see if I'm going to stop sharing. I think I stopped sharing. Okay, excellent. There's a little bit of a delay. All right. So we have Manny, do you want to walk through the questions, or would you? I can do it myself as well since I'm no longer sharing. What would you prefer? All right, why don't I go ahead and start at the top? We have a question from Sean Spath. Are there any shortcuts for participants who participated in the original arrearage payment plan, or is a brand new application required for the newly eligible time period? I'm going to attempt to answer this, and I will rely on Salika to correct me where I get it wrong. You will have to submit a brand new application into the new portal that will be made available the end of October or early November for the new eligible time frame.
That is correct.
All right.
And we can explain why, just so people know, we're not just pin-headed bureaucrats, but we have chosen a program that makes your payments much easier for us to process and you to apply for. So the original program was a one-time program, and this one itself is a one-time program. So we need to do an application again for the second program. So it seems like a small thing, but unfortunately, it will make your life easier.
And on that note, the application portal this time will be much easier than what you all have dealt with the original one. So I think you will be happy with being able to respond accordingly to the questions and submit your application pretty easily. Just we have put up some FAQs on the website. Please pay attention to those because you will need to gather some information prior to being able to complete your application and submit it. You will not be able to enter information and save it this time and submit it later. It's one time you have to submit it or you start all over again. And most of the questions in the application this time will be required.
All right. I'll move on to the next question, which is a little convoluted. So I'm going to read it and I'm going to let you guys listen carefully so that you can answer the question. So, billing periods that contain June 15th, 2021 are not eligible, whereas billing periods that contain dates on or after January 1st, 2023 are eligible, provided that they also contain December 31st, 2022. I think this is referring to someone who has participated in the original arrearages program. And so I think the answer is yes. Our attorney is nodding her head, so I'm going to go with that.
Let me say it a different way so that I think people can interpret it. The dates can be confusing. So
Yes.
if you participated in the original arrearage program, either one, you obviously billed you were eligible to include customer arrearages. That included the date of a billing period that contained June 15th, 2021. You cannot include that billing period in the extended arrearage program. So in essence, wherever that billing period for that customer ended, if they had further arrearages afterwards, you can add those on. It could be a billing period that, if it was a quarterly one, it could have extended several months after June 15th, 2021. And you would pick up with the extended arrearage program with the follow-on billing periods that followed that. So in theory, 6/16 could be a date, but if your billing period overlapped that, which hopefully many of them did, then you can't just pick up and say, well, it included both 6/15 and 6/16. Therefore, I get to basically pay that customer twice. That wouldn't make sense, right? We're trying to cover a bill that they had in arrearage. And if you've already covered it in the previous program, it's not obviously should not be included in the second program.
Thank you. All right, next question is, will service need to be turned back on? Oh, who clicked done? I didn't finish reading it. Oh, where'd it go?
Well, I went to
Okay, here it is. Will service need to be turned back on for any customers who have previously had service shut off? I think that's a daring question also.
Yeah, so I was looking, and it's a good catch. The policy is not clear on that, but the intention by some of the other requirements where we say that you obviously cannot discontinue service to a customer until they've either not can't discontinue customer until they've either agreed not taken a payment plan or have failed to make payments in their payment plan. So I think this is a comment we will take definitely and look at maybe making a clarification to the policy so that it is clear that that is one of the requirements. I should caveat all of this, right? These are proposed regulations, and we're answering them as if this policy exists and is written now. If you have a comment that you would like to make to us as to a suggestion of something different, then please do so. I don't mean to intend that my answer is this is final. Obviously, this is draft proposed guidelines, and if you see it differently and would like to suggest that the board consider it differently, please do make a comment before the comment period so that we can consider that.
Thanks, Darren. All right, next question. Does this cover closed or finalized customer accounts that have an unpaid balance during the extended time period?
Yes. Closed accounts that you still have an open balance on can be included. You then have to obviously follow through with the reporting requirements if those were reported to a credit agency to remove those from a customer's credit report and the likes.
All right, thank you. Okay, this next question is a long one. The extended period is post the moratorium on shutoffs lifting, which allowed for late fees to be charged to customers. Therefore, if we are to participate in the program, are we required to reverse all late fees that were applied to customers after the moratorium was lifted on December 31st, 2021? So that's the first part of the question. I'll hang on.
So as the guidelines are written, they propose that, yes, you would have to do exactly that, that if you agreed to participate in the program and receive arrearage payments, that you would cancel or remove the late fees from those customers. They're not eligible for payment from our program, and they would also have to be removed from the customer's account so that they are zeroed out and not applied.
And the second part of the question, which also may need some clarification in our guidelines, is this requirement on late fees for all customers or those that qualify to receive extended funding?
Well, it would apply to any customer that you're planning to credit an arrearage towards. It gets a little confusing with who's not eligible. Basically, the only ones not eligible would be the industrial customers for you, or obviously those outside of the arrearage period that's covered. Those, if you had someone that is like a residential customer outside of the eligible arrearage period and has late fees, you would not need to cancel those.
Thanks. Are applicants required to have up-to-date audited financials? I think that's a Salika question.
Not for applying to the program, but you will need to have updated audited financials towards the end of the program because this program is subject to single audit requirements since we are utilizing federal funding.
When do we need to pause disconnections?
When you submit your application for the program, you must stop disconnections at that point.
All right, next question is, if we have sent customers to a third-party debt collector, what are the steps we need to take? And maybe I should bring that slide back up for the options. And hang on. All right, here's the relevant slide. So there are three options. You can directly pay the third-party entity to eliminate or reduce the debt. You can refund the credited amount to the customer, or you can create a positive balance for the customers to apply toward future bills. And then you must also not report to the consumer reporting agencies as well. And please,
So Karen, I think these are actually for if the debt was transferred to a third party. So it's not really a debt collector per se,
yeah,
but like
good point.
Transfer to accounting. So if you transfer to a debt collector, the expectation is you would withdraw that from the collector because you are canceling the debt on your end as you pay the customer's credits. And again, you would need to also follow through with, if you had reported those to a credit bureau, that those would be removed. So it is a little bit different. That is another good point to just go off on, which is we did try to provide pathways for entities that were using something like the teeter program where they were transferring debt to a county that was now put on the customer's property tax rolls. And we were trying to provide a method by which you could still participate in the program, aid those customers that had that transferred over under the teeter program. And so those were the options that were given because it was apparent in the first program that withdrawing those once those transfers are made is near impossible and would involve the cooperation of a lot of people that probably weren't going to cooperate. So we did provide a pathway for those. So those are slightly different, but both hopefully helpful.
Okay. How quickly can disbursements be expected after an application is approved?
The application period runs from for a full 60 days. Once the application portal goes live, at that time, at the time the 60 days passes, we will have to do an assessment to determine whether or not we have funding available to pay all of the asking costs that people have asked us for. So my assumption would be we would probably start dispersing payments, at least releasing them from the program aspect to our accounting office, maybe 2 to 3 weeks after the application portal closes. All disbursements for this program will be done by the end of April 2024, though. So we're looking maybe between January to April, we'll have all the disbursements done.
Lika, you probably should mention that they will be a paper check.
It will be a paper check. So please know that no electronic payments will go. Paper checks will go. Those checks get cut from the state controller's office. So once we release a payment to our accounting office, it is about 4 to 6 weeks until you receive a paper check in your hand. So it is very important to make sure that your mailing address for where you want those payments is correct when you load it into the application and on the accompanying forms to ensure that those checks get to the right person and they don't get lost.
All right, the next question is similar to a previous one, which is, does the discontinuation of service only apply to the accounts eligible for the program? And the answer is yes. Will applicants be able to use a snapshot approach to calculate arrearages? I'm not sure I understand what that means. A snapshot approach. Peter, could you provide a little bit more in a subsequent Q&A and we can answer it so that we can understand your question a little bit better? All right, I'm gonna leave that one unanswered and move on to the next one, and hopefully Peter can give us a little bit more clarity on what his question is. The next question is, customer debt sent to third-party debt collectors typically includes late penalties. Are you requiring us to remove those penalties to receive approved funding? And the answer is yes.
Yes, that's the intent of the way the guidelines are written.
All right, next question. How can we assist small wastewater systems who don't have staff or a very small staff with these applications and understanding the process? This is coming from the CPUC perspective here. So what resources will we be making available, I think, is the question, to assist applicants in submitting their applications. And DFA largely will be providing that service. Salika, can you describe what's available to applicants for assistance?
So currently for applicants, because of the simplicity of the online application, I am not sure a lot of people will need added assistance. Should they need assistance, though, they are more than welcome to contact us here at the State Water Board, send an email to us, leave us a voicemail, and somebody from my team will contact them and try to assist if additional needs are if additional help is needed outside of the scope in which my team can provide. We will be working with a technical assistance provider to assist.
Thank you. Next question is, do we need to resubmit tax ID form and unique entity ID again if we already did so in the original arrearages program?
Yes, you will need to submit that document along with the unique entity ID. We are treating this as a standalone program, so I need all the documentation separate from the previous. If all of your information has stayed the same, you can definitely complete that document again and just sign it with a current date and send it in.
Thanks. We were told to modify accounting practices to place payments made during the arrearage period outside of the period so there could be more financial assistance to customers. Can you elaborate on how we can do this?
Yes, I think what the person's asking and applying is, for customers that contain arrearages both within and outside of the eligible period and are maybe making some payments, we encourage you to book those payments against the periods that would be ineligible for arrearages so that they can take full advantage and get much of their arrearages covered with our program as possible, and their own personal payments being applied to the period that's outside that is not eligible to be part of the program. It's really an internal accounting practice. There's nothing we can do about it. We encourage it to happen. You need to modify your accounting practices. I know that can be problematic for some water systems with older building systems. But whatever steps you can take that an auditor could track and follow, I would recommend that you try to do to be the best aid to your customers as you can.
All right, the next one is regarding billing periods. If a bill covered the period December 31st, 2022 to March 1st, 2023, will all water and wastewater charges in the bill be eligible for the extended payment program? In other words, it included December 31st, 2022. Will it be eligible even though it extended beyond by a few months?
Yes, yes. The way we wrote it is the billing period just has to contain a date, and it could be the very last day of the eligible period to be an eligible billing period.
All right, next question. Are arrearages that were accrued during the extended relief period but also resolved or paid before the end of the extended relief period eligible for funding under the extended program? In other words, a customer had arrearages and they went ahead and got it all paid up. Are they eligible to get those what were formerly arrearages but aren't now paid?
So possibly, but the possibly is if the customer has arrearages that are outside of the eligible period and the entity, the water or wastewater entity, wants to transfer those payments that were made to those non-eligible periods, making arrearage periods within the eligible periods, then yes. Otherwise, unfortunately, no. Customers that have paid off all their eligible arrearage periods, unfortunately, can't receive aid.
All right, so the next one is similar regarding billing periods. Are bills that cross over the June 15th, 2021 date eligible for the extended arrearage program if they received credit for this bill under the original arrearage program? And the answer to that is no.
Correct. If you paid it, if it was under the first program and received payment, it can't be paid again. It should have already been a canceled bill. Hopefully, it's not being actually carried as an arrearage anymore on the system's accounting. So, yeah, I think that answers it.
Yeah, thank you. Can you advise what water retailers should do if a particular customer's past due balance has been included in the retailer's program application, but the customer submits payments either full or partial before program credits are applied?
So this is a good question, and this happened a fair number of last time. So what we have modified in this program to try to help address that is asking participants in the program to basically notify their customers and make best efforts, either at their bill payment receiving counters, in mailers and on their website, that they are participating in the program and that customers can expect their points to be covered. Um, Ultimately, in the end, if a customer insists on paying their debt, we can't stop you from taking that payment and wouldn't suggest that you should. But we do expect that you do inform the customer of your participation in the program and your intent to file for that debt. So hopefully through that communication, we can eliminate some of the people that got caught in that period of time between you applying for the program and then us being able to pay you and then having to return the funds because the customer paid.
All right, we keep unpaid debt on our balance sheets, but send our unpaid debt information to a third-party collector. We then pay commission to the third-party collector for all payment amounts received. Are we eligible to claim the commission we pay to our third-party collector as an administrative cost?
Don't believe so, but probably need to make sure we got a little more details on that particular one just to be sure.
So this was an anonymous attendee. So please, if you are listening, make sure that you keep that question in your back pocket when you go to apply so that we can get a complete answer to you as part of your application. Will arrearages for customers with fire service but without water service be eligible for repayment?
That's a good question. I don't think that one's come up before. Let me think about that one.
Water and wastewater service is eligible. So fire service or any other costs that you might bill for are not going to be eligible.
Thank you, Julie. I think the only customers that would benefit from this at this point are customers who are already locked but are not paying the meter charge. So the entire arrearage for this customer is not for water. There's not a specific question. It seems to be more of a comment, but I guess the question is to confirm that that's a correct assumption. Shall I read it again?
Oh, I think what happens is they've shut off the customer, so they're not accruing a volumetric charge, but they are getting a monthly base charge or a meter charge, like a flat rate. And that may be true, and that would be an eligible. You could include those customers to pay their flat rate or their base charge or meter charge, however you're calling it, for the period. Obviously, you'd have to restore their service and offer them a payment plan, pay off all their existing debt that was in the eligible period with our program. If it's outside of that period, obviously you wouldn't be able to cover that portion of it. But hopefully that answers it.
Thanks. Next question is, can the state distribute funds electronically? The answer is no. You will be receiving checks in paper only.
And Salika wishes she could have, but our hands are tied. Sorry.
We got to thank you. That's it. So I'll take it. All right. So can applicants start distributing credits once we receive confirmation from the state, or does applicant need to receive the funds first?
Yeah.
My personal suggestion would be that you would wait until you receive the funds from us. Just because typically that would help keep accounting practices clean and you won't have any overlap. And then that will ensure that you're applying those credits off of the payments that we have sent correctly, so that you don't get into a situation where you have missed an account or that you need to return extra money to us to have us try to help you refund it out, and it'd create a nightmare. So I would suggest you wait until you get the payment from us to do that. But ultimately, it's up to you.
I think you also need to wait on the off chance. I don't believe it'll happen, but if we did receive over $600 million in applications, then we would have to prorate yours, and you're not going to want to have to then go back for 20% because we were only able to pay 80% or something like that. So I think, as Lika said, best practice is to wait until you have our money in hand.
Great. Accounts that qualified for programs like ERAP, the rental assistance program, were excluded from this program. Has there been any change where they can be included this time around?
No, all those same rules apply from those other programs.
Yeah. To clarify, customers must be 60 days or more past due? I don't think that that's a requirement.
So yeah, there is a 60-day component in there. Julie's looking it up to make sure I get it right here. I can see, but I believe we only considered debt to be an arrearage if it's 60 days or older.
And that's from the statute. So we don't have control over that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Julie. Will applications be sent directly to applicants? Will they need to be requested, or will a link be available at the State Water Board upon the opening of the application period? Where can people find the portal, Salika?
When the portal goes live, we will have links on the webpage that Karen shared earlier. And we will also be doing an email blast out to let everybody know the application portal is open with the link. So if you haven't already, I would suggest that you hook up to our email subscription list. If you go to the webpage, right at the bottom, you can start putting your name in there with your email address and all of that and sign up for the extended arrearage programs email subscription list. That would be the quickest way to get notified.
And we have information about that also in the rest of the presentation. So stick around, but we will make that information available on our website as well. Next question is from an applicant who did receive payment in the original arrearage program. And the question is, does the customer have to have had an arrearage as of March 2020 to qualify? Or do I restart my calculation after June 15th, 2021? So the customer would not have qualified for the original because they didn't have an arrearage at that time, but now they do after the June 15th.
Yeah, I think the way I would answer it is any billing period in the eligible period, and since you participated in the first one, it would be the extended portion of the period is eligible. So a customer does not had to have had arrearages prior. They could have brand new ones starting in July of after the date, the June 2021 date.
For auditing purposes, what are the CFDA numbers for this program?
Those numbers will remain the same as they were for the original program, but we will post that information in FAQs, and we will also post that information within the documents that you receive back from us associated with the funding.
So the next question refers to a previous answer regarding the need for audited financials. And the question is, what constitutes the end of the program?
So the end of the program will fully run through this fiscal year, which is June 30th, 2024. And then we will be sending out single audit letters. You will need to be responsive to the single audit letters if those requirements fall on you. And in those requirements, you will have to provide your audited financials with that. So our program for disbursement purposes, funding purposes will end this fiscal year. Our audited, our single audit letters are usually distributed with probably by September of 2024, and then you will have time to comply with that.
All right. Next is request for confirmation. Applicants are encouraged to modify their accounting systems to assign any past due amounts paid by customers to debt outside of the eligible COVID-19 pandemic relief period so that customers may receive the maximum amount of aid from the extended arrearage program. Applicants are encouraged to communicate this to customers who are attempting to pay past due bills or are on a payment plan. So it's the question is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. How many days after we credit the customers can we restart disconnections for non-payment?
So first you need to offer the customer a payment plan for any remaining debt they may have that was outside of the extended period, eligible period. And then a couple clocks tick. They have 30 days to accept that program, or if they fail to make payment, I think is it 30 days after the payment was due, Julie? Are we
I
specific
think so.
about how if they're in the payment plan? I can't remember. Or does it say just fail to make payment?
I don't think it says in our guidelines. But I think it just says, follow the Water Shutoff Protection Act. So you'll go back to the default once you're done.
Right. So the water, there are statutes around, and I believe those are say that they have 60 days before it's considered a late payment, and then you can shut them off. But don't quote me on that. You have to look up the statute, and we'll try to put that in the FAQs.
Yeah, thank you. Can we assume that we can continue to disconnect customers who have arrearages that are not within the extended arrearage timeframe?
Mhm.
Yes.
So if they're, let's just clarify it. So if they only have outside of the arrearage periods, then absolutely this program doesn't cover them. If you're covering credits within the period and they also have outside, in that instance, you still need to offer them a payment plan for those that are outside of the eligible arrearage program and go through the process we kind of just described, where they can either not take up that payment option or fail to make payments in that payment option. And then you could proceed to disconnect at that point, but they would need to be turned on if they're participating in the program or if you're crediting them within the program.
Yeah, and again, we'll make sure that we have an answer and maybe an example in the frequently asked questions, so it's hopefully more clear. Next question, can you define enterprise revenue loss? I think this is a Julie question.
Well, we didn't define it
Yeah, we don't need to.
because it was eligible. It was an attempt on our part to, in the early days of the program, before the feds had even written their guidelines, Treasury didn't even have guidelines out. So we were going off of what we thought the program might be able to handle. Types of revenue loss water systems may experience outside of particular customer direct non-payments. I won't get into all the details of what those are. There are several types of them that we thought might be eligible, but upon further investigation, none of them are, and the only ones that we're able to pay are the customer ones. So we have not defined that in this program, and it's not an eligible component. So.
Mhm.
All right, next question. Will the final and approved program guidelines for the extended arrearage program be posted on the Water Board's website? Yes,
Yes.
they will. After the board acts on October 3rd is when they will be considering the guidelines for adoption. One can assume the disconnections will be paused not for everyone, but just to those accounts receiving the assistance. But that's, I think
Yes.
that's right. It's a little confusing way to ask it, but yes. As agencies are required to reverse the late fees, can they be reimbursed to the agency, possibly as part of the administrative fees of the extended arrearage program? Again, agencies were under assumption that late fees were allowed as the moratorium was lifted in 2022.
So late fees were allowed as part of the moratorium, but as part of participating in the program, the guidelines are in essence requiring you to drop them as a part of participating, and the fact that you're receiving the full amount in big lump sums that should, forego part of the costs associated or the presumption of late fees, which is the extended a period or extra administrative of dealing with late checks and all the likes. We do have an administrative component of our funding that water systems can claim 3% or up to $1 million based on what we're funding. So that is there to try to ameliorate some of the potential what the late fees could have gone for. But yes, we are asking you to drop those and not request them. And again, just to reiterate, I'll do it at the end again. This is how the draft guidelines are written. If you have a comment or don't believe that should be the case, you should, provide a comment to us about what you think it should be, so that that can be considered by the board in adopting the final guidelines.
Next question is, we have customers who have refused to accept the benefits due to bankruptcy. Would it be okay not to apply funds to those qualified customers?
Mhm.
Or is a wrinkle you don't think of? But it seems legitimate if it's at the customer's request. Although I'd say we might want to get in touch with you and talk about it a little bit more and include Julie and our legal counsel about maybe the water system still claims it, but to cancel the debt that you've had to write off. I'm assuming with a bankruptcy charge, you've kind of written off that customer. So you're still carrying the debt. You just are foregoing collecting it. And maybe there's a way to figure out how to pay the water system, but not credit the customer. So that one's going to need some more talking about.
Okay. In the previous program, we applied payments separately for water and wastewater. Is it going to be the same this time, or will the balances for water and wastewater be combined?
Oh, great question. They are combined. So you get to include them in one fell swoop this time. Now, of course, if you have a bill that has trash on that and other things that, are not water or wastewater, then those have to be excluded.
For applicants with other services provided, electric as well, I think you answered this partially just a minute ago. Does the stopping of disconnection severance for non-payment only apply to the water and wastewater services? I think it only applies to the water
Yes.
services. Is
Right.
wastewater ever cut off?
Wastewater is not cut off to my knowledge. If it is, you've got a big problem on your hands. But I can see someone that does provide electric and water, and we're not making you reconnect their electric service, just their water service.
Yeah. What are the qualifications for customer arrearage? Does partially paid accounts or bills qualify?
Yeah, so any arrearage, any amount that was unpaid, if they were making partial payments and there's partial debt remaining, then certainly that would be just as eligible as if they had not made any payment at all.
All right, we have clarification from Peter on what a snapshot approach means. We use data taken at a given point in time to calculate our arrearages. This is compared to the live data approach where a customer arrearage may change as they make payments. And so the question is, will these applicants who use this snapshot approach be able to use that to calculate their arrearages?
So I think, and Salika help me out here, I mean, if a water system is looking at what their standing arrearages are on the day they fill out the application, it's going to be what they see in their accounting system at that point. And that's partially why we have the returning funds that weren't when you actually then receive the money from us at a later date and credit the customer accounts. And if those accounts have now had some other activity on them such that the debt is no longer there, you have to return the funds type of thing. So we expect that most people would be snapshotting at the time of your application for sure. That's kind of the only way you can do it.
That is correct.
If debt was sent to a third-party collection agency, at what point should the third-party collection agency stop reporting to a credit agency? at the time of submission of water arrearages application or at the time of receipt of water arrearage funds? That's a good
I don't think
question.
we're clear on that one.
If a debt was sent to the third-party collection agency, at the point in which you submit the application, you should stop reporting the stuff to them because it is along the line of the snapshot. When you submit your application, that should be what you are requesting, and it shouldn't be changing too much. With our program, we could potentially be paying all of that debt out that is covered within the window of time. So you could potentially apply the payments received from us to all of that debt, and you will not need the collection agency to recover that particular debt.
Yeah. This is the same question as before. Maybe I'll read it and you can confirm. The only customers that would benefit from this at our water district would be customers who are currently locked but are not paying their bill. These bills only consist of meter charges but no water. I feel this isn't what the state intended these funds to go towards. So this is similar to that earlier question that we had.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the same vein, we're paying for people that have closed their accounts as well, so that basically any debt that they owe the water system is paid. This is a benefit for both the water system and the other ratepayers that have to carry the bill of the water system. So I think the answer is yes, we would pay for those that are locked and are still getting a bill for a meter charge or a flat base, even though they don't have a volumetric charge component, and we would pay that amount.
If we can't modify our billing system to apply customers' new payments toward ineligible period billing, can we use a snapshot of the current billing arrearages to apply the credit? Or must we reassess the billing arrearage at exactly the time of credit implementation? If we can use a snapshot, what is the timeline eligible for the snapshot? So this is a similar but a little twist on the snapshot question, which is they take a snapshot when they apply, they receive the funds, there's a new snapshot. Which should they use for reimbursing customers at that point?
I think they're asking that if they showed in their snapshot a customer had an arrearage and then later they paid it, so when they get the money from us, it's been paid, but maybe they have later arrearages now, can they apply it there? So the way I would want to answer this is only debt during the eligible period is eligible. And if you're unable to transfer and move it, you're not going to convince an auditor, I believe, that you paid within the eligible period. And so I wouldn't do that. You're going to need to be able to have accounting books that show that our payment we provided to you went to arrearages during the eligible period. So it's unfortunate, but I wouldn't want to say you could convince an auditor with the snapshot approach that will work.
I think the next one is the remaining portion of that same question. It said, previously we were allowed to give a credit to customer accounts if they had a past due balance at the time of application. This was previously addressed in a Q&A session. I think the answer you just gave, Darren, may apply here, but it's not completely clear. And I would suggest that if this is your question, this is an anonymous attendee listed here, please make sure that you get clarity on this question as you go forward to submit your application. We transfer our 90-day delinquent bills after April 30th, 2023 to the county tax roll to be collected. Then we adjust the delinquent balance off of their accounts. Would these be considered resolved/paid and not eligible to the extended program?
So this was the slide Karen had up where we have tried to offer pathways for you to participate on behalf of your customers. It does sound like it would get a little tricky if you've like removed them from your books, but if you obviously had books and accountings that you could show that they had that debt and that you transferred it, then you had those options that we mentioned of providing them a credit going forward, giving them a check, and I'm going to not remember the third option we provide, but there are mechanisms we've tried to provide for you to aid those customers who had their amounts transferred over to the county.
So the third option is creating a positive balance for customers to apply toward future bills.
Thanks. All right, next question. Can you allow the debt applied in the application be fully paid to the customer regardless if they paid some of it down? Our accounting systems apply credits to the oldest debt, and it's very difficult to credit to ineligible debt. Essentially, we're penalizing people for paying down their arrears while we administratively get through the process.
Yes, and it's unfortunate, but there has to be a paper trail and an accountable record. And so without being able to do that transfer in your system, there's really no way to make it work. And it is unfortunate.
Please confirm that low-income house water assistance program or LIWAP recipients are not qualified for this program.
So another thing we need to cover in the FAQ. My understanding is those folks should be receiving aid and making their payments, but that is an interesting question. If they are getting that aid and are in an arrearage state, we'll have to double check on that one. I don't know off the top of my head.
The bottom line is we can't pay arrearages that are already being paid for by another state program. So we need to tease that out and figure it out. So there's no double payment of the same arrearage. Next question, are you taking taxpayer ID forms and UEI numbers that were sent in a news blast from September 5th? I've never heard back. So
yes, we are taking taxpayer ID forms and UEI numbers. You can send it to the email account, which is the dfa-waterarrearages@waterboards.ca.gov.
Can the customer notification be a standard letter that explains the credit received on their and not the exact credit amount, since this letter will be going out to the various customers?
Yes, it can be, as long as it's, explaining you can see a credit on your bill and, have a separate letter that says that credit is from this program. The letter doesn't need to contain the amount.
If a customer is currently on a payment plan and they are eligible for the program, do we stop the payment plan or continue? If we continue, then they might end up with a credit. Can we leave the credit on their account, or will it have to be returned to the customer or to the state?
Another interesting one.
Yeah, that's it.
I think I want to think about that one a little bit before I give an answer on it. It's not apparent. Obviously, if they're on a payment plan and they're making payments, well, yeah, I don't think we fully anticipated. I mean, our intent is that if they're on a payment plan and they are trying to pay off balances, that we would, you know, and they're eligible for the period, that we could cancel that debt that's theoretically in the payment plan, or at least a partial component of it. So we'll just need to play out a little bit of ways. I mean, our intent is to try to aid those customers that are on that plan. The question of what you might do during the interim, we need to think about a little bit.
All right, back to the customers sent to a third-party debt collector. Our customers that are sent to third-party debt collectors are no longer customers of ours. If the amount that we have sent to the debt collector exceeds the amount eligible for the extended program, and we allow them to sign up for a payment plan for the remaining amount due, when will we be allowed to send over the remaining balance due to our third-party debt collector? That's confusing.
It sounds like someone's got both in and out of eligible period debt, and the entire amount has been sent to the collector. I think the answer is that you can use our program to cancel the portion that is eligible that went to that debt collector. So it would be a partial cancellation of their debt, or a re-establishment of a different amount, a lower amount, obviously, that was not covered by the arrearage. And that would, in essence, reduce that customer's debt that now is held by the collector for the period outside of the eligible range.
I think it would kind of matter how your arrangement with the third party debt collector is. If you have one where you're just doing commission and you pull your back accounts versus you've given it to a third party debt collector and you wipe your hands of it, then you can't get it back. There's a little bit different. How the procedures are going to be different.
Okay. All right, we have about 6 more questions and want to make sure that we have time to go over the next step. So hopefully we can get through these quickly. If a water customer made a payment but then got a returned payment fee, can we use these funds to cover that fee? The water customer made a payment but then got a returned payment fee. Can we use these funds to cover that fee?
I think you're talking about bounce check.
Oh, I see. A bounce check fee from their bank.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Well, not the customer's bounce check fee. No, it needs to be
Return
the
payment
water
fee.
system's carried debt. You wouldn't normally see that. I mean, the customer could claim they had
Yeah.
a bounce check, but that wouldn't show on the accounting records of the water system,
No.
if we're reading it right.
Tawny, if you could clarify in another question, or keep this in your list of questions to ask when you submit your application, that would be helpful if we could get some clarity on that. If we determine a customer's arrearage to be $100 at the snapshot of application on October 31st, 2023, we receive the state funds on January 31st, 2024. Between October 31st and January 31st, this customer makes a payment of $50. So their balance is now $50. Can we still honor the customer with a $100 credit and use the $50 payment for their future bills?
No, unless, of course, you have a way of taking that $50 payment, and if they had outside of the eligible period debt with you, you could apply it to that. And in essence, they still have then $100 debt within the eligible period.
So use the customer's $50 payment to pay debt that is outside of the eligible period, and use our money to pay what was within the eligible period.
Which isn't technically within the example she given. Presumably the $100 is fully within, and they paid 50 of that. And in that case, unfortunately, you can't keep it as a credit for future bills for the customer. It has to be just the debt at the time you're covering their account with our fund.
Yeah. Can late fee reversals be claimed as part of the administrative fees? No. No late fees are eligible for funding.
Right.
We have customers that have not paid their advance payments. Are advance payments or deposits included?
No.
This appears to be additional question. Sure. It starts with, but the accountable record is the application and the money that was dispersed to the customer when the funding was received, even if at the time of disbursement the arrearage was paid. It speaks to the intent of the funding. It qualified at a moment in time. Does it seem right to penalize the customer for the administrative lag? This is the credit I was referring to previously.
Yeah, which is the step we've taken is the best we can do with the way things are set up, which is we hope you're advising your customers that you're participating in the program and that they may be receiving a credit, and you then hold that debt a little bit longer in anticipation of receiving money from us. If a customer is adamant and refuses and insists on paying, it's a bit tricky. I know you can't like ask them not to pay, but you can be like, we're going to do this program. It's going to cover your debt. If you walk out today and we are able to cover it, then that should be part of your consideration before you write this check to me today. But if they do make a payment and the debt doesn't exist at the time you're crediting their accounts, then unfortunately it's not something we can cover with the program, even though you took a snapshot and it did exist at the time of application.
Going back to Tawny's question, she was referring to a bounced check fee, so we answered that. I'd suspect most billing systems apply payments to the oldest balances. This is going to eliminate a majority of water systems and customers from receiving assistance. I don't know of any system that can reverse an old payment applied to old charges and apply it to newer charges. Accounts operate under running balances. Can customers be eligible for a payment if the extended time arrearage charges are less than the total balance when request is submitted? For example, extended arrearage window shows we charged $1,000, and at the time of submission for payment, the customer owes $1,800. Can the state board please consider this? I think the answer is that we can only pay for customer arrearages during the extended arrearage eligibility period. I'll admit, I'm not sure I understand the example.
Yeah, I'm getting lost in it too as I read through it.
Yeah.
Read it slower. Yeah, I think they're asking. I think you're right, Karen. I think that if they owe 1,800, but only 1,000 of it is within the window, then we can only cover 1,000 of it.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunately that comes from statute. So we're stuck with
Yeah, we don't
authorization
have
from the
discretion.
legislature as to what periods of time and debts we can cover with the program.
A customer owed $200 and paid us with a checking account via online, and we get a fee for our payment processor if the payment is returned as insufficient funds. In other words, the bounced check question was because the water system or wastewater system actually gets charged the bounce check fee, this wasn't referring to the customer's bounced check fee. And so the question is, can we cover those bounce check fees we applied to the customer's account?
I believe the way we've written it, Julie can help me here, is that all extraneous fees other than just that which was for the water service are not eligible.
Right. The only difference between this and late fees is we're not telling you you have to waive bounce checked fees. You can still charge those, but we can't pay them.
These are continuing questions regarding, I think, the $1,800 versus $1,000. So it's just the billing systems cannot be applied to certain invoices. In live systems, the oldest bill is paid first. Therefore, the credit makes sense. Just to clarify, the online portal is for our customers to, oh, sorry, this is a separate question.
Yeah, this is the same problem. I mean, we are aware that a lot of the old accounting systems have this rule built in, and you can't, if you're going to put an amount in, it's going to automatically apply it. It doesn't give the water system the option of, which debt to apply it to, old or new. It just automatically sticks it there. And in order to keep your accounting records, I would just don't know of a way to overcome that and have you not get in trouble with auditors later that are going to audit through a system possibly.
Just to clarify, the online portal is for customers to apply? No, to be clear, this is only for water systems, wastewater system treatment providers, or wastewater billing entities to apply. Customers do not directly apply to this particular program.
Yeah, this isn't LIWAP. There's no customer participation needed on their part. You're acting on their behalf to apply for them, then apply the credit to their account, notify them that you've applied that credit and where it came from, but they need take no action other than if they have debt beyond and you're offering them a payment plan that wasn't covered. So there would need to be interaction from them and you at that point. But at no time does a customer need to contact us about this program.
I'm not sure if this is additional information about the $1,000 versus $1,800. It says that the example is a misapplied payment, $1,000 at the application snapshot in time versus $1,800 at the next application snapshot in time. So in other words, presumably the $800 also is an eligible arrearage during the arrearage period. And but they didn't request funding in their application for that second snapshot when they're getting ready to pay the customer bill. I think that's the example.
No, I think the way this would work, but Salika, help me out here, is that if you had extra funds from customers that had made payments that had gone down, and you had the $800 that you could now, instead of returning it to us, use it on that documented mistake in the accounting portion for that other customer, you could apply it. If you don't have money from us, then we can't write you another check or modify it, and you would be short on that customer's arrearage.
That is correct.
For customers who haven't received program credits yet, can any payments they make be held by the retailer as a deposit on their account, which would not impact their account balance, that is later applied to any other account balances? So in other words, can they hold it as a deposit, the payment, so that they can apply our funds to their eligible arrearage? I think that's a creative accounting way to address the conundrum we find
Yeah, I was
ourselves in.
gonna say, as long as you can say that it's part of your accounting procedures and you have a method to show how you're managing that, then I think that would be completely legit way to do it.
And
I
go
would
ahead.
I would just check with your accounting department before you do that.
And our last comment is that it feels bad as an agency when people are losing assistance because they're paying their bills. This program will take months to get cash to customer bills, and the state board needs to consider this. And yes, we are not. We're pretty fast as a state agency, but we're still a state agency, so we're slow compared to getting cash to people.
Right. And with the creativeness that we just heard from the one person, as well as, an anticipation of communicating with your customers that you are participating in the program, hopefully that aids some of them in making a decision about how to do that.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and take a couple more minutes, and I hope we still have folks on to just go quickly through our next steps. So, as I mentioned earlier, written comments on the draft extended arrearages program guidelines are due by noon on this coming Monday, September 25th, 2023. Consideration of board adoption is during the October 3rd, 2023 board meeting, so just a week from Tuesday. Following adoption of the guidelines, we anticipate the application to portal and application period to start either the end of October or early November, with application period closing 60 days after it becomes open, so somewhere in the January timeframe. And funds should start being dispersed shortly after that in February, once we have the ability to total all applicants and make sure that we are either able to pay all of the application or all of the amounts requested, or if we have to proportionally allocate those funds based on the calculation in the guidelines. Additional information is available on this website, and you are also able to subscribe to the email list on the State Water Board's website at this link. This link also is available on our arrearage payment program website to subscribe as well. And our contact is dfa-waterarrearages@waterboards.ca.gov. And thank you, everyone, for participating in our webinar today. Looks like we don't have any additional questions. Really appreciate the 61 participants who held out through the entire webinar. Thank you. If you have questions that we were unable to answer or were not clearly answered today, please do not hesitate to contact us at the email address that I just showed. And we will also use this webinar as a way to update all of our frequently asked questions and make those available on our website as well. Salika, Darren, Julie, have I missed anything that I should say before we wrap up our webinar?
Not that I'm aware of. Thank you everyone for participating and the good questions.
Yep, thank you so much.
And
Thank you.
Have a
Yes,
good
and-
rest of your afternoon.
And just remind them that
Bye, everyone.
And comments, written
Yes,
comments, due Monday, noon.
Right. So this
Yep.
isn't an adopted policy. You can have an opportunity to suggest changes to it by noon on Monday, and then those will be considered in what we take to the board.
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.